My name is Mike Mayer. I'm with Experiential Interpretive Design. My background, I actually got started interested in this field by working at and attending summer residential camps in Kentucky and North Carolina and Colorado and New Mexico. I have done work in interpretive services administration and environmental education administration. I've been a classroom teacher and done administrative work in schools, as well as working with the Institute for Earth Education, doing earth education programs, environmental education. And I ended up my 9-to-5 career working at the University of Arizona at the Cooper Center for Environmental Learning, which was a partnership with the Tucson Unified School District. And Tucson, Arizona is located in the Sonoran Desert of the U.S. Southwest, and we are on the unceded lands of the Tohono O'odham and the Pasquayaqui indigenous people. So I want to introduce my colleague, Bill Reynolds. Bill?
Yes, hello, good day, everybody. My career has spanned probably 5 decades at this point, and before I retired and joined up with Mike and Lars when we created the Experiential Interpretive Design Group. And it's my jobs and my lifestyle has always been around creating visitor experiences for people. And my career started with planning side of things, analyzing, delivering, and designing these visitor experiences. And I start with a frontline interpreter with 2 different nature centers, one a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And also I was at frontline interpreter in Banff National Park as a park naturalist. Then I moved to be a supervisor of visitor services at an urban park where we were dealing both with recreational programs and interpretive programs, which created an interesting dynamic. Then I started getting interested in planning and design, facility design for visitors. And that led to being hired by the tourism department in our province here in Alberta. I was looking at analyzing natural and cultural heritage attractions. Eventually became the director of tourism development and enhancement for our province. Virtually right now, in my case, I'm on land that was a traditional meeting ground, gathering place, and traveling route for various indigenous groups. Some of these people that we know as we call the Sioux, the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot, the Métis, and the Dene. And I'll transfer over, and I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Transfer to Mike.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, like I said, this is our second welcome webinar, and we really wanted to share with you all great ways to greet the guests. And I wanted to start with this slide. This is a picture I took when I was up in Portland, Oregon, and I really thought this was a really nice greeting here at the front of this zoo. This gentleman right here is actually with the zoo, and he's greeting people, welcoming them, also checking to see, oh, do you need a ticket? Well, if you need a ticket, head over there. If you already gotten your ticket online, head over here. Hope you have a good day. So to me, it was a really nice way to welcome people to this site. As Bill mentioned, he and I, along with Lars Wohlers, our colleague in Germany, established Experiential Interpretive Design in 2017. And we really wanted to try and promote the ideas that were in the book, Interpretive Design and the Dance of Experience by Steve Van Meter. Really thought there were some good ideas in this book that we're not getting out in terms of interpretive planning. So our mission is we really want to empower experiential interpretive designers to connect people and places. And we truly believe that interpretation sets the framework for the visitor experience, that the interpretive plan should be driving any other management plans that are going on. And you can contact us at our website, and we have occasional blog posts that come out. You're welcome to take a look at those as well. So today's agenda, what we're going to try to accomplish in the next 90 minutes or so is we had our introductions, and we're also going to look at the welcome in context of the bigger interpretive picture, look at the interpreter's role, look at a process that we like to use, CI, the steps in the welcome, We're going to focus today on the pre-arrival and the arrival part, not so much on the departure. Um, we'll be looking at some outcomes for welcoming. Of course, we want to have your comments and questions along the way, and we'll wrap up with one idea you can take with you today. So let's put welcome in context. As I mentioned, the Van Meter Interpretive Design and the Dance of Experience talks about 15 steps in the design process. And welcome is kind of sandwiched in the middle. Of course, most sites already have a mission and hopefully working on outcomes that they want their visitors to leave with as part of the defining steps. And the preparing steps are also getting the image that you want for the site and the short little message that kind of is a unifying factor throughout the experiences that the visitor might have. And then we have the visitor actually arriving, and what do we do with them? Having that great welcome, how do we orient them? How do we guide them in those receiving steps? And then how do we have these interacting steps? What do we want them to take away with them in their head, their heart, in their hands, and in their stomachs as they're eating? And then there's those producing steps. What do we actually want them to experience? What do we want them to achieve? What do we want the experience to achieve? How do we motivate people to get involved? How do we organize the material so it's easily remembered? How do we reinforce the outcome from this experience in other places at the site? And then how do we then evaluate the experience to see if it has achieved what we actually wanted? So those are those 15 steps. And once again, we're just going to focus on the welcome today. So the welcoming role. One of the roles that Bill and I want to play is we want to try to stimulate some thinking for you, to kind of think a little bit out of the box, some things that we have looked at and experienced, and how we approach working with sites in order to get the best interpretive experiences possible. Because the welcoming role is not just a welcome sign, and it's not just a visitor center, because our task in interpretation is to really enrich this dance that the visitor is going to have with the place, its uniqueness, its specialness. And as designers and interpreters, we want to facilitate that experience to make sure it matches with the mission of the site. So that's kind of where we're headed today. And we have this process we like to use because we truly believe in building relationships with the sites that we work with. We don't want to just be consultants. We want to be coaches, and we want to continue the process of working with them even after a project is finished. So we really feel it's important to include these 4 things in the design process: collaboration, getting out of our silos, working with the other internal personnel, making sure, the communication, the PR, the website, the facility staff, everybody is talked with about different projects, different partners, different departments, even regional partners you might have. Then we want to integrate this information so the ideas are unified, and there's this approach to collaboration where we're all on the same page, working together. And then communicating, which is also connected with collaboration here. Are we listening to others? Are we sharing? Are we presenting the plan and process to the rest of our staff, to other community members, to other stakeholders and associates? And finally, we want to implement whatever the plan might be. Is it targeted visitors? Is it something we need to get out to the general public or the community so that they know what is happening at the site? We do not want to just develop a plan that sits on a shelf. And we feel like through collaboration, integration, and communication will lead to implementation of the kind of interpretive experience your site will want for its visitors and guests. So, when does a welcome happen? It's not just at the site. It actually starts at home when someone has decided they want to come to your site. So they may want to be doing some things like looking at your website, finding a brochure about you, asking somebody else, going to the public library. But the welcome also happens, it takes place throughout the journey from the home to the site. Are there things that make them feel welcome, reduce anxiety, give them a little whiff of mission? And then, of course, when they get to the site, it needs to be incorporated in the attendance and the admission. You know, we don't want the attendance and admission to run the welcome. We want the welcome to run the attendance and the admission. So that's some of our things to think about when the welcome happens.
Yeah, so just to kind of set a framework for when we actually welcome, Mike's kind of given an overview there of things to think about during the customer journey. It happens many places welcome, not just at the visitor center, not just at the welcome sign, but it actually takes place at a pre-arrival, an arrival, and a departure. And we're going to get into the details of what that actually means, but there's three main stages, and we're going to be dealing with pre-arrival and arrival, not so much of the departure, which is the when people are beginning to leave your site, they're exiting, and you have to think about how do you make sure you welcome them back. And that can take place in a number of areas too. So next slide will tell you just to kind of dealing with pre-arrival, that first part of those three chunks, we're going to be dealing with at home, because that's where it starts, in the sofa, in the living room. And then we're going to talk about en route, when you're actually in the car and you're driving from your home towards the site. And then the third component is actually you're just almost there. You're seeing the parking lot up ahead. You maybe see the gateway, the entrance area, front of the building, but you're not out of your car yet. That's the three components of what we call pre-arrival. And then the next slide, we're going to be dealing with arrival. And that's where the site approach kind of overlaps a little bit with the car approach. And we're going to talk about parking. So you're just before you get out of your car into the parking or staging area for trail. Then you'll be at the entrance. Could be for a building or for that trailhead, and the exterior look and feel. Then we'll talk a little bit about, you've just gone into the entrance, the interior part of it, which could be washrooms, it could be the lobby, just that little, before you've actually done your admission, attendance, just at that element. So that's the arrival part that we're going to be dealing with today. And then next slide. Oftentimes we jump right into the how are we going to do this? How are we going to welcome people, and who are those people that we're welcoming? And as we go through some of the examples that we're going to give here, I'd like you to think about the personal and non-personal techniques. We'll be sharing a little bit of those, mostly non-personal. We got a lot of input from the first webinar dealing with staff issues, and that people were very interested in non-personal stuff. Then the idea of sometimes is it all just welcoming all through words, or are there images? And the images we're talking about here is nonverbal, in other words. And it could be graphics, it could be what do you do with treatment of infrastructure, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, the for whom is that thinking about all the different types of individual drop-ins that you could get, but also in the case of group bookings, there's some really good welcomes that could be done for them. So keeping those in mind. And we usually, that's, I think, where everybody spends the time is, welcome, let's, how are we going to do it? But Mike, next slide. Really, it's the why. And we jump sort of over the why a lot of the times, and we find that's usually something, we're sometimes guilty of that too. But what is it that we want people to be thinking about? What are the desired outcomes that we as a interpretive site has? And so in first case, with just a couple of little thought bubbles here, we're glad that you're here. How do we get that across? But we'll be getting into that. But we've been expecting you. And how about, have we laid out a welcome mat? We have laid out a welcome mat. This is what we want people, this is an outcome that we want to make sure that we accomplish. And that's usually through that pre-arrival stage. We are approachable. Certainly that's the kind of a thing that we want to be in the person's mind. And lastly, At least that's the last what we're going to give here is some initial thoughts. There's a lot to discover here. And if we can just give a bit of an inkling of that in our welcoming, then we feel that those are all key things that need to be done. Just going to open it up, Mike, to the gallery here of participants. Are there other thoughts that you might have in the sense of why do a welcome? We've talked about, how make it homey and have food and beverage. And we're going to get into that in a lot more details and make sure your dog's under control. But from the why perspective, any other thoughts from people? I see a hand. Clark's got a hand up.
Yeah.
So you can unmute her, Clark.
For me, a big thing is, and you use the word staging, but it is this idea of transition from the regular life to this special moment that their experience could possibly be. It's the entry into that.
Nice. Thank you.
And in the chat, we have from Stacy to give participants a sense of belonging through engagement.
Belonging, great.
Yes, yeah, that is a good one.
Transition to special moment. I like that. I see a chat here.
Yeah, you belong here. Kelly was saying she liked the you belong here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just to kind of want to make sure you're still with us. Okay, we're not. Yeah, how'd we get to introductions? Okay, we need to go down to.
I think we've done all the introductions. So I'm going to talk a little bit more
that's right.
about the pre-arrival welcome considerations at home and en route and on the approach. And I'm going to start off with at home. So some of you probably have regular visitors. They come to your site on a regular basis. You probably know them by their first name. You know what they're looking for. Our impression is that they will seldom use things like your website, maybe to get your newsletter to get their information, but they kind of know what they want to do. They know where they want to go. They've already experienced a positive welcome. They're motivated and they are ambassadors for your site. So there may not be a whole lot you have to do with this group in terms of the welcome. But what you're really trying to do, these next two groups, there's the occasional visitor where maybe they hear about you or some special event. So one of the things to look at, and this is where we're trying to get out of those silos as working with the IT and the communication folks, is your website easy to navigate? Is it going to provide an active experience, not just static pictures, but are there some, video things that are going on to show what is happening? Are they going to be able to get timely answers to questions? Okay, now what do I mean by that? If they happen to get put on hold, do they have the ability to go, like a lot of places will say, hey, if you'd like a call back, push 1, give us your name and number. We will call you back. Do you have that capability? Or how about just instant messaging? Is there somebody available? And I'm not talking about a bot. I'm talking about a person who, if someone wants to instant message and has a real quick question about your site, can somebody get back to them immediately on a device? And finally, there's newsletters and announcements and social media, radio. We have on our NPR station and commercial stations, there'll be special events going on at centers and they want folks to know about it. So how do we have these occasional visitors feel like they are more welcome at home? Things to easily navigate, easy ways to get answers to questions. And once again, this goes to that CI/CD process: collaboration, integration, communication, and implementation. And finally, I'm sure you've got folks who have never visited or are not aware of you, or maybe not aware of how you have changed over time. Billy Rankin at the Shaker Village in Kentucky was talking about this, that he has to go out and do personal outreach because they are kind of out in the country away from a metropolitan area. So he has to go to service organizations like Rotary clubs or botanical clubs. He is trying to do this personal outreach to folks who really don't know what they're about. Once again, clear contact information on a website is so important. Can I easily find how to get in touch? You know, so often I have to dig around to find a phone number to reach a place. And finally, is there a special newcomer message that can be on your website just for newcomers who have never been there or unaware of who you are? So, you know, once again, we're looking at the who. Which of those visitors do you need to focus on to help them feel welcomed at your site? Let's talk about pre-arrival now. They've gotten in the car, they're off the couch, they're en route, as they say in Canada. Here's a great sign. Now, this Bayou Ranch is a historic site in Alberta, and they're not even close. Bill, what are they, 20, 30 kilometers away still? And here's a sign that's telling them, okay, you're going the right direction. Keep going that way. Now, you know, this is on, they've negotiated to put this on private land, this big billboard. At least here in the States, if it's going to be in an easement, it's got to, you know, you got to work with your highway department, your transportation department, and they usually won't let a sign this big, but there may be something that says Bayou Ranch 20 kilometers. So at least you know that you're heading the right direction. Reducing anxiety, feeling more relaxed, building anticipation, a whiff of mission. Now, here we are really getting close to the site. The site itself is, let me find my cursor here, is right back here on this road where they'll be going. So almost there, and here's a big cowboy. So they know, hey, we must be getting even closer. And then I'm sure there's a sign over by the entrance itself down here. And so this is kind of, once again, reducing anxiety, knowing they're going the right direction. And it's so important, I think, for that pre-arrival en route welcome for folks. When they finally do make the turn in there, are there things that start to excite them? Are there things on this approach that are interpretive, not just management? You know, it's very important that, you know, that interpretation is not a management tool. Management is a tool for interpretation. So you need to have that interpretive plan in place so you know how to best manage how to get your visitors to the site and make them feel welcome. So here's another approach. I'm going to take you down this little lane. The biosphere is located right outside of Tucson, about 15 miles. And there are signs en route that tell you, you know, biosphere 20 miles, biosphere 5 miles on the highway. And this is the entrance right off the highway. You cannot miss it. There is this pole, flagpole, has the 3 flags. There is the biosphere kind of obelisk right here. And right here is their image that they use. So it's right there off the highway, easy to spot on this approach. And as you then come into this, and this is about a 2-mile driveway to get down to the biosphere, there's this little gateway that tells you immediately you're in the right place. This is the biosphere. Once again, we have the image, who they are, who's running the place. You go a little further down the road. There's a big curve that's coming up, so they want to make sure that you know which direction to go because the other road goes straight ahead. Here's another little way you could get lost, another little path, so very clear directions where you're heading. And then finally, you get to where you can see the other cars and you know that you are at the visitor parking lot. So all this is, once again, the approach, part of the pre-arrival welcome, reducing anxiety. You get out of the car and here's this little patio, and over here you can see there's a sign that points to the entrance. Now, Bill and I were talking about this, this entrance, and we're going, why do they have two of these signs here? You know, and why is this one so much bigger, this one so much smaller? You know, here's another path down here. Is this going to be a little confusing? Why not one big sign right here that indicates the entrance, so that once again, there is no confusion about where to go, because the pictures are exactly the same. So, you know, we were just kind of having a little discussion the other day about why they did this, and is there a better way to make sure directions happen? And finally, there's another little entranceway, and you can see where it says entrance in there, welcome to the biosphere, where they go in and do their admission. And once again, they have their little image that they've used throughout. Now, this is a good example of management over interpretation, because I'm going to go back just a little bit. In the biosphere, there are 4 different biozones. There's a desert, there's a grassland, there's an ocean, and there's a rainforest. You get no indication that any of that is coming on this road. But wouldn't it be great if there were pictures in between these kind of directional signs to kind of whet your appetite of what is coming next? Right along the side of the road, maybe on the opposite side from where these directional signs are, to really get you excited about the welcome you're going to have and what you're going to see, what you are going to do at the site. So, you know, this is one kind of little gateway. And we don't need to do any more introductions. So, Bill, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Super duper, Mike, and thanks. Interesting that we saw a good example of management over interpretation, and that's not really what we want. We want interpretation and management, a nice balance, and maybe even more interpretation.
Bill, do we want to see if anybody has any questions real quick?
Oh yeah, sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Any questions or comments so far that folks want to jump in with?
It seems like with the, especially with the Arizona one, the biosphere one, you also have not only the management thing, but the separation between the cognitive and the aesthetic. They're providing information, but they're not providing context or the aesthetics, the feeling of the place. The feeling of the place is institutional by the images that you showed,
Yes.
as opposed to part of the organic world.
Okay. Right. Good point, Clark. Thank you.
Excellent, Clark. You're leading a great segue into some of my next couple of slides, because it's very cold. I found it very cold. The entranceway, the concrete, very institutional. And one of our expressions is, how do we soften the institutional feel that so many of our sites almost browbeat people with? But okay, moving on.
It gets you where you want to go. But is it the welcome you want for folks? You know,
yeah, and that's why we like to spend so much time on welcome, because I think it's the forgotten aspect, and we really see it as being key to a total visitor experience interpretive plan. Okay, so Mike handled pre-arrival and did the 3 components of pre-arrival, and now I'm going to be dealing with the arrival and try to touch on those 4 components, from the approach, the parking, staging, and some of the interior and exterior. Next, Mike. So with and here we are, 4 H's. This comes right out of the Interpretive Design, the Dance of Experience book that we said, has inspired us so much, by Steve Van Meter. And the head And these aren't in order of priority. These are all equal. But the head, we're so good usually at providing that information, as Clark pointed out, but it's the heart component, that feelings, the emotions, the affective domain of our total body experience that we so often leave out. And we're going to try to give you some examples of people that have done this effectively. And thirdly, we have to think about too, is that in the welcome approach, perhaps there's some tangible aspects and there's some interactive and doing things and sensory components to welcome that can create some memories for people. And it isn't just when you actually get on the site and do your interpretive experience. The welcome aspect has a role to play there too. Remember, we go back to that interpretive role with the welcome. And then fourthly, the other part of that whole individual is the hunger component, the food and beverage. We talked about the hydration and the eating and some of these delights. And I'm really always intrigued with the one example that Steve gave in the book about the Everglades. He was suggesting that as part of the welcome, people should all, when they come through the gate, they should all get a piece of sawgrass blade and have a bit of a sensory experience with it, because that is such a key essence of the Everglades. And we'll be talking about that kind of aspect that we need to concentrate on. Next slide, Mike. So going back, reminding you about, let's just run through, put them all up there, run through that why. We have to definitely keep that those whys in mind, and we add the belonging, and we add the feeling component, and the sociable. Somebody added a social experience, and yes, that's definitely part of the hunger. Often that eating and drinking, social aspect is a key part of that. So keep that in mind when we're going through here. Now, two big concepts that we're going to deliver before we get into some very specific things. Gateways, the concept of a gateway, and that is that whole idea of setting the stage, setting the mood, the tone for what's going to come up ahead. And so this idea of an entrance, and I love my entrance there on the bottom slide. This is from a park, national park in Tanzania, and it actually says welcome. It says Karibu, which is welcome on the gate itself. A little hard to see because it's in white, which is an issue. But the thing is that it was colorful. It gives you a hint of anticipation of what you might going to see, because they show you there's some sculptural motif wildlife on one side of the gate, and then on the other side there are birds, some of the representative wildlife that you're going to see in this. I just thought a simple, powerful gateway. Didn't cost, well, I don't know how much it cost, but things we need to think about, art and science together, and getting people excited about what's ahead. And then the top slide is the whole identity sign that we usually have. Where are we? And in this case, this is a city. It's the city of Progresso. But there, I put it in because it's an idea. It's an interactive sign. It's a selfie sign. But you're allowed to climb all over that thing. You can put yourself in between the letters. So that's that doing. That's that hand-on, tangible memory part of the 4 H's. But it also, each of the letters have certain things, a motif inside of them that are representative of the essence of that town. And that we could use the same thing. I guess my examples, don't take them so literally. Use the examples and say, hey, how can I apply that approach? Because my approaches are not necessarily going to be all from interpretive sites. We need to borrow from other places and use what their strengths are. Next slide. The second big concept, gateway is one. The second big one is giving that hint of the essence, what your site is all about, the mission, and curiosity. Begin to establish a sense of curiosity. And the middle picture, we all know everyone has to go to the washroom first. That's one of the things that prevents them from, you're welcoming, but they have to be comfortable. And interesting, no one actually mentioned, here's the way to the washroom when they were talking about their personal welcome. But in any case, in this place, you got a sense of what was going on. You knew it was a beach environment, but also they tucked in this little thing. They have sand castles there, but you see there's a little sternwheeler on the right side there with a Canadian flag sticking out of it. And that's because there's a heritage component. There still is, down at the end of the beach, there is a replica of a stern wheeler. So there's that hint. The picture on the left side, there was a bridge that you had to walk across a bridge before you got to the trailhead for signs. So wonderful area to actually set up anticipation. So they had posters of different wildlife that you could potentially see in that park. And on the right side, a cultural site, here they used a sidewalk to put in artifacts, cultural artifacts, again, to get your mind, get the mind going. Oh, this is going to tell them there's going to be a lot of kind of tool things that are going on here in this site, because it was an industrial kind of heritage site. Next, Mike. So here are the things, again, we talked about the why from our standpoint, the things that we were thinking about. But from what we're hoping is that the people, if we can get people, the visitors, thinking, wow, when they've come to your site, I know where to go. And literally, they know where the washrooms are. For example, this case, the welcome sign on the left, where very clear restrooms there, tour tickets there, gift shop here, cafe there. This is the Woodford Reserve that Mike talked about in webinar 1. On the right-hand side, this was an interesting, a nighttime signage, but it themed. So again, I get, we've heard this thing about standard issue, and I just feel like gagging. We have to get away as much as we can from standard issue, and theming the sign. This was a voyageur encampment, and everything to do with canoeing and voyageurs. So they did paddles at the sense of their sign and direction. I thought wonderful. Next. Another thing we'd like people to say, I know where I am when they're at this place. This is one of the best signs that I think. An aerial photograph of, Mike, if you put the cursor over the left side there in the red box, that's where you are. So the standard, you are here. You had a sense of kind of how big this, well, you're still not too clear on scale, but the area on the next red box, it's a dotted line. It runs along a pathway all the way around that. It's the recommended itinerary that you take. In this case, it's not that difficult to figure out. And they also have, you can see the major features of the place are quite clear. And colorful, it's large. I knew everything very quickly as part of my welcome. Next. Okay, now this one, you have to read the small print underneath, visit the Brighouse Nature Center. And Mike, if you can just point out that lower line there. It says, walk around this building to the front door, open seasonally. So now what was happening there was that the major flow of traffic was in front of along the side of the building. There was a design issue, obviously, so you got to correct it with a sign. The front of the building was on the other side, and it ended up being that wasn't the major flow of where people were walking. And so they counteracted that. And so in a way, you can say, yes, they're helpful. I would have missed that if they hadn't actually had a big sign that said, "Ooh, wow, look at all those photographs. Look at those beautiful animals and birds that exist here. And geez, I could go to the front door and find out more about these." Next.
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick, and once again, it shows why it's so important to work together with the other designers, the architects, the engineers, so that the interpreters are involved at the very beginning, because I'm sure if the interpreters would not have put the door on the other side of this building, if the visitor flow came on this side. So once again, getting out of the silos.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so next one is dealing with, again, hopefully they're going to say, hey, they're expecting me. The conversational tone in our signage is so important. Again, non-personal. Hey, your husband called and said, buy anything you want in front of the gift shop. Now, again, it's the context. It's this idea that they're talking to you, and you wouldn't actually, that would be at a gift shop appropriate, but we can have a similar appropriate thing for welcoming people to a site. The one on the right side is dealing more with when you have, a group's coming. Often I've seen people with banners, or I've seen signs, you have a birthday greeting, happy birthday, Nicholas. Well, I'm thinking that even if you don't know that a group is actually coming at a scheduled time and Nicholas's birthday, you could just use happy birthday sign and put anybody's name up there, common names. Happy birthday, John. Happy birthday, Carol. And it's quite likely that somebody that visits you that day will have that as their first name. So next slide, Mike. Again, this idea that, wow, wouldn't this be great if everybody could come to the site? That's our goal, is that they say, they are so friendly. They are approachable. Look at that sign, not just we're open, and it's so clear and so personal. Hey, we're open and we're awesome. And we want to talk to you, at a visitor center. Yes, and be mindful of people speaking other languages. You're right. And we'll talk about that when we get to the welcome sign. But that's a very good point. Thank you for making that. Mike, what was, I think I was going to say something. Oh, yeah, the second picture was on that previous slide. You're friendly because even sidewalk treatment, this was a little chalk drawing using kind of a weedy piece. And just, if you had those little things hidden around places, you'd go, wow, this place it's going to be fun here. Next slide. So they do. Wow, this place has a sense of humor. And one on the left side picture, it's spring. We got so excited we wet our plants. That's for your landscape. And you could change the "it's spring" to, hey, it's you. We got so excited we wet our plants. So a great sense of humor. And the second slide, that's kind of softening the, so often we have the yield, caution, bah. And in this case, it's caution, future world leaders at play. Now, this was at a camp setting, so it makes sense for aimed up for kids. But how many people have a kids center and this idea of thinking about the wording of our signs, not standard issue. Okay, next. I see myself, and that's what we're talking about. I belong, and that picture in the middle was actually, it's a library, and on the outside I thought, wow, this is really great. In order to they had a lot of scaffolding going on, but what they did was they put pictures and quotes of various people that had visited the library and expressing why they enjoy the library, how they use the library. And I thought, this approach can be used so many cases in our own situation in heritage sites. This idea of seeing myself as a whole variety of people. And obviously that Mike was saying that the poster on the left side is really common in Arizona. I've only seen it once in Canada, but maybe I don't get out enough. But again, it's that this was in a lobby of a building. So part of that, the arrival process, you immediately got a sense that I'm accepted. And then the one on the right side, that if you can read that was outside of a washroom. And it's about whatever. So it's not male, female logos. It says, as long as you wash your hands, it's okay. And again, that's reinforcing humor. It's I belong, diversity displayed, I guess, seeing myself in that place. The next slide, Mike. So, and this, Mike mentioned earlier, the whiff of mission. This is an expression we like to use, that we think there's, not only are we keeping in mind what people are, expectations that they have about feeling welcome, but from an interpretive and management standpoint, we need to be providing in that welcome setting a whiff of mission. In this case, it's putting, an example was putting quotes into actual rocks as you're aligning, going from the parking lot to the building, to the visitor center perhaps, or along a pathway. It's getting you to, take time to look. So you're setting an expectation that this is a place for reflection. And you can, whatever your goals are, that those can be reflected in interesting quotes, for example. Okay, next slide. Oh, exercise time. So maybe just any questions or any other comments that before we jump into this, like looking at a visitor center, and is it welcoming? Mike, are you seeing anything? Oh, no, don't skip to the next slide. Okay, I don't.
Well, is it the question you're asking is this welcoming? What you're
Well,
saying?
yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah. Let's jump into the exercise. Yeah, as you look at these two slides, and then I'll just put a little context here. You see a bit of a sidewalk in the front, and that's a major pedestrian walkway. And then there's the stairway up to the two entrance doors. And the visitor center is that building. So yes, do you find this visitor center welcoming? Let's not jump to the next slide yet, Mike.
I kind of have two things about it. One is the sign isn't painted, so that could be
Yes.
freshened up. And two, the two doors are confusing to me, and the split down the middle, because there's no indication, like with the signage, do French people go through one door and English through the other?
No, it's males go through one and females go through another. It's gender. No, I'm kidding. I think it was an old school though. But yes, good point. Good point. I mean, the sign was just incredible. I mean, Banff, this is Banff National Park. And I took this picture about 2 months ago, and I'm going, they still haven't fixed it. But yeah, I mean, you can't even read that from the sidewalk. And
that's an important point, because it's like there's a lot of information on those signs, but there isn't the context for them to actually see it. You haven't established a viewing point for them that would be beneficial for them to take the time to go through all the information on the sign.
Sorry. Plus, if you're standing on that landing there, it just doesn't feel like you'd even have room to read the sign. It feels like you'd almost be falling off.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
If I were there and I was in a wheelchair, would I be able to tell how I could get in the building?
Good point.
I believe there is on the left side of the slide, there's another little entryway in, and I think that's where they've got a non-stairway. But that's a really good point. I can't say for sure. But you can get up, but you still can't get up those last steps. You're right. I think there's another. Oh wow, that's a really
it looks like there's an entryway, a handicapped entry over on the side of the building. But for this, even taking that into account, if we're looking at accessibility issues, is how does someone that is challenged by steps, how can they get close enough to those two main panels to actually read them?
Yeah.
There's no staging area for that. And this is all, it feels like it's interior information and not exterior information.
Clark, you took the words right out of my mouth. Most folks, when they get to a place like this, they want to get in and get going. This is not where they're going to stop and pick up information for the head, heart, hands, or hunger. They've already, you get to Banff, you got to drive, you got to get there. It's like, where's the bathroom? Where do I get started? What am I going to see? And then, just in general, this isn't a very welcoming entrance, it's not very enticing at all. And then to try to put this information there, and I assume one is in French and one is in English.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's really going to stop and read this? And so once again, have we considered the needs of the visitor in our welcome from the very beginning? And that's, once again, I know I keep harping on this, why it's so important to have the interpreters involved in the design process, and why we need interpretive planners and designers who will help the architects and the interior designers and the landscape designers be involved. They're directly involved in the process, because we want the interpretive experience to drive the master plan, not vice versa.
It's very, very easy for us to be critical of situations, but it's so important to, if I don't know what the volume of traffic is into the visitor center, but it could be so much better if they did some enhancements. Anybody has any enhancement suggestions from a welcoming perspective? How could this building exterior be better to kind of comment? Remember, we were saying why? What are some of those thoughts that people, the belonging, the feeling, comfortable, some of the thoughts we mentioned that should be going through people's heads when they look at a visitor center building that you want people to come into and ask questions and find out about the park.
I would bust those doors out and put just like a single door with windows in. Like take that whole wooden frame out and just make it all windows and doors.
Because right now it's so you can't look in. It's so unfriendly, right? I agree, big time. As long as I know it's a heritage building and there may be some things you can't do, but let's assume that you can do anything to this. What else? Any other thoughts?
You've taken into account that it is a historical building. You may not be able to change the actual portico, but the double sign in the center, where what you have is the repetition of sign and the only difference is language. Instead, you have a wonderful site there, a wonderful frame for something monumental, an image that is monumental, utilizing minimum text. So you don't have to get into the language issue.
Yeah.
It is that sort of thing. And even little things, and I know this is waste of electricity and all that, but those wonderful light fixtures there, even having them on during the day is just a type of indicator that there is something special here. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, lights on kind of mean we're open. Our light, you know, yeah, I know. There's some subtle cues here and they're not using anything. Anybody else? I would love to spend a whole workshop. I mean, this is what Mike and I loved it, analyzing situations and then going for it, not just critiquing them, but how can we enhance them? How do we make this better? And there's so many ways that this could be done. But
one last thing I'd like to throw in is how about a little bit of color or on this little, you know, platform right there, or even on the steps, you know, something that maybe is indicating what's going to be coming up or part of the park. You know, it's just, you know, very institutional.
Yeah. And the railing too. There's stuff that could be done with the railing. Those, a little lollipop sign is actually.
They want $60,000 replacement, and actually for water, I guess.
Sorry, maybe someone.
Yeah, but Mike, I think your point there about the concrete, the walkway is very important.
In it, yes,
because a lot of the times we don't think about the ground we're walking on. And one of the things that we're asking as interpreters is to see people.
Can we have someone turn off they're mute? We're hearing background noise from.
Yeah, I don't know if that's.
Sorry, Clark.
Yeah, oftentimes what we're asking for is to actually asking people to decide and look at something different. And if you use that gray, that horizontal surfaces and the vertical surfaces on the steps to emulate some of the graphic elements, for instance, on the railing, those sorts of things where you're teasing people to look at something, you're putting in a little bit of whimsy so that they get used to seeing something unusual. Something like that.
Did you guys seem to have a few comments too? You have comments about this?
Sure. Yeah, we were having comments being.
No, in the chat. In your chat.
In the chat. I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's read. I'm just looking at our time. I think we can cover the chat at the end. Mike, you think we can do that?
Well, let's see. They're real quick. The architectural style is really similar to our main building. It looks closed, more colorful, soften it with plantings. Great idea. Yeah. Move those maps off the building and place them somewhere nearby to open the visual of the building. Okay. And and please remember, somebody wasn't muted while we had some other conversation. Just make sure if you're not speaking, your mute button is on. Okay, let's.
One of the things that often is going to happen, we always put more signs up to correct faulty design. And I can just see a sandwich board going up saying open with an arrow. But I mean, that would be that would be the minimal thing that you want to do, because you want to capture that lots of people going by there and they're just not being enticed in. But here's some ways to entice people in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about doors. 3 different examples of doorways here and there. The one on the left was all about colorful. Now, these are all interior doors, but again, you got to take the concepts and apply them to various different situations. But the color on this left side, this was to get you into a gift shop. Beautiful example of that. The one in the middle is, geez, treatment to the door. This was a Mayan visitor center. And so they actually had, these are 2 motifs that are often used in Mayan pyramids. So they represented those on the doors. It gives you that whiff of mission, that hint of essence of what this site's all about in the doorways, and you're drawn towards them. Let's see, the other one was the, oh yes, grain. This was in a bread making museum, and in the doorway they had sheaves of wheat, and I thought, okay, wow, another great idea of hint of essence. Okay, next, Mike. The welcome sign, and somebody brought up the comment about multiple languages, and yes, that is something we have. That's for whom we have to be very considerate of. People speaking a lot of different languages other than English, and then in combination, this is a reconciliation era for Canada and our whole world. And I thought, wow, I saw this sign not too long ago, and how beautiful the example of different translations and what they would say in order to welcome various Indigenous groups that were important to the. This is Banff National Park, also in the White Museum there, and I just thought that was kind of neat. The come on in, there's lots of room. That's one of the most beautiful one, I thought, that it encapsulated within their welcome thought. Okay, next, Mike. The whiff of essence again. Now, this is 2 examples in a washroom. So we moved into the interior slightly of the building, but also dealing with that initial welcome and people know where to go, literally. And for a recreational site, this is a wrap, like I say, a washroom cubicle wrap, showing you, hey, there's a climbing wall close by. So again, sort of giving you ideas of anticipation of what's to come, even though you're just going to the washroom. The other one is a natural heritage site, so wildlife that you might see, again, wrapped around a doorway. Next. I feel relaxed, cared for, and comfortable. And this Woodford Reserve example that Mike talked quite a bit about in our first webinar. And that was, again, it's, the comfy chairs. Would you feel intimidated by the photo of someone climbing? Okay, I guess in the washroom. That was on the outside of the, I see, if you're, I wouldn't feel intimidated by that. A photograph was watching me going to the urinal, I think is the comment, but anyways, you kind of threw me off here. I feel relaxed, cared, and comfortable. The sofas, I mean, this is like top end of the stuff, but at least how about benches, and benches with backs, and benches that we talked about the use of plants a little bit, or it was mentioned at least in our visitor center concept. I think we underutilize plants. They just can make such a big difference. When I worked with a lot of ag tourism places, we encourage that so much, to work with a landscape gardener. And but you have to keep on top of it, because now the plant's encroaching the bench. So they work together well, but you have to be on top of them. Next. Okay, so now this picture on the left, it's a little hard to see, but you've just come into an art gallery, you've just opened the door, you're still kind of in that early sense of arrival stage, and it's like, hey, they're still thinking about me, because this is a fold-up chair, one of those little, it's flat and it'll fold out like this, so it has a little seat, and it's got like a tripod of legs, and you can carry that around the gallery, so you can actually sit in front of your favorite picture. This is the first place I've ever seen this. The idea of when you have a center, when you're like on the West Coast or the wet coast, lots of rain, having umbrellas. Hey, they're still thinking about me, you know. So next slide. Now, invitations, and I'm going to treat myself. Now we're talking about that hunger side, and what the food and beverage people do so well is invite you and create some kind of a desire for their products. And I'm thinking, we don't do that enough in interpretation. We have to think more about interpretive invitations. We don't invite visitors to do things right off the bat in that invitation, or sorry, in the welcoming area. And this was a floor treatment. That ice cream image was on a floor. So you're walking along, hey, you're on vacation, treat yourself. And yeah, I'm going to treat myself, you know, get you into the food and beverage area. And next slide. We talked a lot about the fun stuff, but as part of welcoming, and you got to know what's expected. This is about instead of in this case it was it's clear what is not permitted, and very much this is very standard. No. Clear iconic stuff on the left side of this picture. So even if you couldn't read you didn't know Spanish, you didn't know English, you could kind of tell that, yeah, no drones are allowed, no folding chairs, no coolers. But let's look at the next sign, or the next slide, which illustrates. Now this is, again, I only took a picture of a half of what this was. This was a huge, so we have an issue with way too much information on one slide. But what was good, and so nobody would end up reading any of it, but some of the titles that were used and some of the descriptions were very conversational and very different. But it's in that concept of, hey, they explain what the code of conduct is here, and I get it, you know. And I'm just going to give the one at the top. Would your grandparents wear that? Question mark. This museum is family friendly. Shirts and shoes. Mandatory. And then they go into sports bras, bikini tops, or short shorts will not be permitted. Clothing displaying offensive content is not allowed. And I thought, whoa, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of stuff wrapped into that whole thing, and very interesting. I've never seen this anywhere, but I thought the title was really interesting to get my attention. And two down, Fluffy just loves dinosaurs. This is a dinosaur museum, by the way. We know pets are family. However, they're not allowed inside the museum, with the exception of special aid dogs. Please do not leave your animals alone in vehicles while you visit, because summer temperatures in the Badlands are deadly. So again, a lot of stuff wrapped up into this. But it's that idea that it's some of the titles, and even the Don't Feed the Fossils one about not bringing in food and drinks into the gallery. I thought, hey, we're getting somewhere, you know, with at least not just starting with the word no. But it really, I was text heavy, wouldn't you say? If this is only half of it,
Yeah,
it's on the side.
and it might be, you know, this is another place where this could be on a website as well, not just at the site, so people know ahead of time what to expect. And it is kind of in a little casual way, you know. It's not saying no, you know, we love Fluffy, but Fluffy may not be, you know, this may not be the best place to bring Fluffy. You know, here's some other places where Fluffy could go. You know,
so
if you're working with a regional park system. So
I'm going to get to that in the next slide, Mike. Yeah.
Okay.
So the point is that it's a reinforcement of things that should have been done in pre-arrival. And there's a lot of things actually here that you need to know before you get there, but you have to also reinforce it again in case they didn't read all the pre-arrival stuff that you hope they have. So the next slide, Mike, is it's okay. And this is about rules and regulations, and we had this a lot in the first webinar, and a lot about dog. And of course, we talked about dogs. Welcoming is, get your dog under control. I found a really friendly and a different approach, the one on the left, where it's from the perspective of the dog and the dog owner, that it's okay. You know, I mean, they're assuming as a dog owner, it's okay. My dog is friendly. It's not going to hurt anybody. Well, then they go, some dogs may be nervous, reactive, or in training. So other dogs are going to be maybe annoyed by this other dog, you know, the dog-dog interaction. So they're taking it from a very different perspective than what I've ever seen before. And it says, for the love of all dogs, leash up. And I might have put that in a little bit bigger and bolder, because that's the message I think they're trying to get across, right? And but interesting approach. The one on the right side, dealing with what Mike was just saying, is that if you have a regulation and where you are right now is not where, for example, you don't want dogs. You don't just say no dogs with an X through it. It's about, there are other areas that can be off leash, which is where your dog would be really, be a much better place for him to go, or her. And here they are. They show you the map at the place where they don't want you to have a dog. They want it to be leash. So there's a leash, unleash, and then there's no dogs whatsoever. But this idea is that you're providing people with an outlet to go, oh, I'm not supposed to do it here. I just found out. I'm angry. But now you've taken that and you've spun it around and said, hey, here's where your dog, is welcome to be running around. So that I don't see that enough. And then the next last thing for me is going to be and I'm going to sharing with Mike, is this whole idea of staffing issues and the idea of personal and non-personal messages, and how can you get around this when you don't have somebody always available. And this, I thought, this is the sandwich board sign, but it's a little bit better than it's just a sandwich board, and it's an actual cutout of a person. And in this case, it was a heritage site that was, I think, representing the 16th century or 17th century. And so they had an actual person that's in period costume, and he is directing you to go somewhere. So you don't, when you don't have another person to kind of be placed there, and you can't welcome people. But in this case, it was not so much great welcoming, but at least it was directional, and a little bit better than a cold sandwich board sign.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, the other things that came up in terms with the first webinar about staffing issues. Well, one was at a place that said, well, you know what, we have a lot of part-time staff and we have a lot of turnover and we have to continually train them. And how do we get them to be enthusiastic and welcoming if we know they're not going to be here very long? So one approach, they said, well, you know what, we need about 10 people to staff, but what if we changed our business model to having part-time people, to having fewer full-time people who are going to be then invested into the site? So instead of 10 part-time, let's have 8 full-time who really want to be there, who can then provide a more welcoming experience for the visitor. The other was saying, well, volunteers are often enthusiastic about what they're doing and why they are there, that can help continue the welcoming experience on a long-term basis, or having, those two things, the volunteers and looking at your business model. Because, one of the concerns this person had was the people in the back office who are really committed are the ones who can provide the best welcome. But now we've got these part-time people out front. So how do we get them invested in the welcome? How do we do that from both a business standpoint and an interpretive standpoint? And obviously you have to look at it, from where you're located, and do you have people who you can get in? And of course, from the non-personal, I think Bill has addressed that of once again, how do we provide information in a welcoming way and provide alternatives if they're kind of disappointed when they get to a site and they haven't realized that, oh, no dogs or no food, no drones, whatever it happens to be. Okay, so some things to reflect on. We're about ready to wrap up here. So have you rethought your role in welcoming from this webinar today? Oops. What first impressions do you want your guests or visitors to have in their head, their heart, their hands, and their hunger? And is there anything you want to change about welcoming your guests or visitors in the pre-arrival or the arrival stage? So these are some things that, you know, hopefully you'll reflect on from this webinar. And we'd like to go around and maybe have each of you share one idea or reflection you can take away with you today. And you're welcome to share verbally, or we can share in the chat. I'm going to stop share for just a minute so we can have people chime in if they like. And let's see. Kelly, any one idea, reflection you'd like to take away and share with everyone?
Sure. For me, it was the idea that the visit really starts before they've left the house. And so I'm aware that, oh gosh, we need to work on our website so badly. And then also see about how can we add more signage to help guide people, because people miss us all the time.
Gotcha. Thank you. Adele, anything you'd like to share?
Ooh, oh, I just like your saying of if there's a design issue, correct it with a sign.
Yeah, right. Okay. Susie, and Emily?
I liked the focus on reaching people before they've even left home, and that makes me think, as Kelly said, boy, our website needs some work, because we're located, our 1,000 acres are in actually 3 different municipalities, and so you have to figure out where you're going to enter and then get on the trails. So that needs some clarifying. Also, we're just about to undertake a major campus renovation. We've just hired architects, and in fact, in about half an hour, I'm going to go meet with the architects to talk about events needs. And now is the time for us to make very certain that we work into their designs and their rendering as much welcoming as we possibly can. It doesn't need to be any harder than it is to find us.
Great, thank you. Jessica.
And Jessica joined late, by the way, so maybe she can also introduce herself.
Yeah. Oop. Maybe she's not there.
Maybe she joined late and left early.
Yeah. Dawn.
Yeah, we're in a process where we're sort of redoing our interpretive plan, updating that, and also thinking about signage. So just the confirmation of just how interlinked these two things are, the interpretation and the signage and the greeting. And thinking about, because we're also in a historic district, so there's limitations on what we can do as far as signage and welcoming information, but thinking about how we can do that in a tactile, very image forward way. I'm the one that talked about foreign languages. Our local school district has 139 different languages. So as much as possible, present that in a way that provides information, but in a way that's very accessible to people and very welcoming. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly?
And welcome to
Yeah,
Kimberly.
Yeah, hi, Kimberly.
Yes, Kimberly Daniels. I'm from Calgary. I work with the Alberta Culture with historic sites and museums. I would say just that, I think it's mentioned before, but having a real welcome feeling. Like it's like, you know, we've all seen those signs, no smoking, no dogs, no everything. And it like almost says, stay away. We want people to feel like I'm here. I got here. I found, you know, like your website, your signage got me here. Now, do I want to cross that threshold? Do I want to pay money? Do I want to pay money for this experience? Is it saying, oh yeah, it's worth it? And then I guess the next one, your people have to be warm and friendly, greeting. Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Show interest, engage. And that does wonders. And the negative, if it doesn't happen, wow, people recognize that too.
Great, thank you, Kimberly.
You touched on that threshold anxiety. which we brought up in the first webinar just a little bit, but it is a key concern that if people don't, and that's that slide I talked about, do you see yourself? If you, and which also languages is another issue, but if you're yeah, if everything is represented there as white male, which I know we're getting away from, then it's an issue.
Are we?
Yeah.
Well, some places are doing better than others. How about that?
Yeah, okay.
Tong, would you like to let us know if you have any ideas you're going to be able to take away or reflections from this?
Sorry, I might have a little trouble with my camera, and
that's
thanks for
okay.
inviting me, and it's a lot of great information. I echo Kimberly's, and I think the no sign is something we need to take more into consideration, how to turn that negative message into a positive message, and there's a lot to learn, and how we're presenting that no message, and triggered me to thinking about more on that side.
Okay. And Tong, I know it came in a little bit late. He's also here in Tucson, Arizona. So Tong, I'll be happy. I've talked with Nancy before, so let us know if we can be of any help in the future. This
Tong's with a zoo, with the Reed Park Zoo.
Reed
So we
Park
got
Zoo.
a real good, we have an amazing diversity of sites today.
So I want to thank you all for joining us today.
Oh, we still got, somebody else, there was a,
yeah, Nikki left.
oh, okay.
So this
Jack left.
recording will be put up on a YouTube site that we have along with our first webinar. If you want to view that one as well, which deals a little more with the anxiety and the feelings in terms of the welcoming. And of course, this one dealt more with the pre-arrival and the arrival. Thank you very much. Bill, anything else you want to add?
Actually, Adele, I think did we give you a chance, Adele?
Yep, you did. Thank you for checking.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, good.
Okay, appreciate y'all's time, and you all have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
So long.
Bye-bye.